The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, June 8th, and I am back. I know some of you had Yaron Brook Show withdrawal syndromes, but it's over now. Take a deep breath. Deep breath. Big sigh. And we're back. So no worries, guys. And we will be back all of this week, all of next week, and then it's Okan. So, June is a busy month. All right, let's jump right into it. And this was a busy weekend. I'm sorry I wasn't around to give you the blow-by-blow, but I figured I'd give you a ex-post blow-by-blow on what happened this weekend in terms of Iran and Israel and Lebanon and Trump. It got pretty confusing. And I don't think the media does a very good job of actually presenting kind of the facts, the sequence of events, and the rationale and the reasoning behind it. In addition, there's stuff that is ongoing as a consequence of what happened in the weekend, and we'll get to that as well. So let's just start. Let's just jump right in. So Israel has a problem on its northern border. The problem is called Hezbollah. Hezbollah is constantly attacking Israel, sending drones and missiles, in particularly these new kind of drones with fiber optics cable. Israel does not have a solution for them yet. Missiles, drones, and they also shoot anti-tank missiles from across the border into Israeli towns. And this is obviously killing civilians. It's disruptive to people's lives. It's a direct assault on people, and this is exactly what you have an army to deal with. In addition, Hezbollah has planned for many years now, but has a plan for an attack on Israel very similar to the October 7th attack, whereby they would amass hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people, on the Lebanese side of the border and just cross over en masse, take over villages and towns in Israel, rape, pillage, slaughter, do everything Hamas did on October 7th. So Israel, has decided that it cannot allow Hezbollah to be on the Lebanese-Israel border. It has tried to get the Lebanese army to basically evict Hezbollah and take over those positions. The Lebanese army basically refuses to confront Hezbollah. It's afraid of them, and for good reason. I think the Lebanese army would probably lose in a confrontation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a Shiite terrorist militant group that was established in Lebanon in basically 1982-3 by the Iranians, by the IRGC, and has since functioned as an extension of the Iranian state. It is an organization committed to global jihad, to the takeover of the world by Islam, just like the Iranian regime. Anyway, so Israel's been fighting a war with Hezbollah. The beepers. You remember the beepers? They've been bombing Beirut. They've been bombing, and they have put ground troops into southern Lebanon and basically kicked out Hezbollah from southern Lebanon. Not all of it. There's a river called the Litani River, which is a main river within southern Lebanon. They've kicked out most of Hezbollah. North of that river, there's still some pockets that Israel has not occupied, like the city of Tzor, which I don't know what its name is in English, but it is a city on the Mediterranean coast. Israel doesn't want to go in there. It's too populated, too much civilians, and I think they're worried about kind of global backlash if something goes wrong. Oh, I just pressed start. Okay, what happened here? Start. One second. Let me get this all. This is not working. All right. Leave. Start. So it's been kicking Hezbollah out. In the meantime, it's been discovering massive tunnel systems, huge amount of ammunition, and basically everything you would need for the kind of plan of rushing into Israel and attacking civilian populations there. And they are constantly dismantling them. In a few cases, they've actually gone north of the Litani River to capture strategic positions like the Beaufort Castle north of the Litani, which sits the strategic location. It's an ancient, I think, pre-Roman, maybe Roman, maybe Ottoman, but certainly Roman. But I think Roman. Certainly Ottoman, maybe Roman. God. Beaufort Castle, which it sits on an incredible geographic vantage point, and Israel has occupied it and controls it. And underneath, it discovered this amazing network of tunnels and bunkers that could hold hundreds of Hezbollah fighters. So Hezbollah has its fighters in the south trying to attack the Israeli forces and with drones and with other weapon systems. But in addition, Hezbollah has training grounds and ammos in the Bekaa Valley to the northeast, the northern eastern part, the central and northern east part of Lebanon. And of course, the leadership and the organization is run out of a neighborhood in the southwestern part of Beirut. And Israel, during the war in 2004 and earlier this year, has basically leveled major parts of this neighborhood. They've brought down whole buildings. This is where they killed Nasrallah. This is where they killed the entire Hezbollah leadership. Of course, there's new leadership now, as there always is. And Israel, that's where the leadership still resides. And Israel periodically bombs Beirut to take out the leadership, to take out their infrastructure, to take out command centers and communication and control hubs. As part of the deal, the ceasefire deal, if you can call it a deal, as part of the ceasefire capitulation that Trump agreed to with the Iranians, where the United States capitulates to Iran, it was agreed that Israel would stop bombing Beirut. And generally, Iran expressed the view that they would not sign any deal as long as Israel continued operating in Lebanon at all. Israel, of course, cannot agree to this. But it agreed. Trump put a lot of pressure on them, and it agreed to this formula. Their formula is now in war. You didn't know this, but it's a tit-for-tat formula, right? Here's the deal. Anytime Hezbollah attacks Israeli land, not attacks Israeli soldiers in South Lebanon, that's legit, according to this formula. But if they attack Israel proper, anytime they send drones or missiles into Israel proper, Israel then can retaliate in Beirut. This was agreed with Netanyahu and Trump a couple of weeks ago. This was the formula, because Trump was putting a lot of pressure on Israel to stop in Lebanon completely. Netanyahu wouldn't give, so Trump pressured on Beirut. So Netanyahu gave him Beirut, but on the condition of Israel has to be able to bomb Beirut if Hezbollah sends missiles into Israel, or drones, or attacks Israel. Anyway, I think it was on Friday, Hezbollah did exactly that. Hezbollah, and Iran, by the way, Iran has said, if Israel attacks Beirut, then we will attack Israel. You see the tit for tat for tat for tit? or something like that, all negotiated by Trump in order to facilitate the greatest, best, most exciting, most tremendous, fantastical deal in all of human history that will look nothing like Obama's deal. It will be so much better than Obama's deal that Obama will have to literally commit suicide from embarrassment and how better Trump's deal is going to be from Obama's deal. Anyway, in order to do this, Trump has twisted Israel's arm, and it did that. But on Friday, the Hezbollah attacked Israel proper, crossed the borderline into Israel, and you know, the drones were, I think they were shot down, but shot down in Israeli territory. So Israel on Saturday bombed Beirut. Now, you have to, you know, this was like a symbolic bombing. They didn't go after any big target. They bombed a headquarters that was mostly vacant. 2 people died. I think 11 injured. But that was it. Nothing is compared to what Israel's capable of doing and has often done, where they've killed dozens and taken out leadership figures. These weren't important people. It wasn't an important command center. It was symbolic. You attacked, you violated the quote ceasefire. You know, you'll get something in return. So this happened. Israel bombed Beirut, and on Sunday, the Iranians retaliated by launching about 25 missiles in I think 4 rounds into Israel. All the missiles were shot down, it's important to note, by Israel. There was no U.S. assistance. In the past, there's always been U.S. assistance. No U.S. assistance in shooting down the ballistic missiles shot by Iran towards Israel. Anyway, at that point, Trump calls Netanyahu. At that point, Trump gives interviews to anybody who calls his cell phone. I mean, this is the only president, I think, that allows journalists to call him a cell phone. So all these journalists, Barak Ravid from Axios and somebody from Fox and I forget who else, somebody CNBC, call up President Trump, and Trump says, I won't allow Israel to retaliate. I won't allow. I mean, look, no damage. Iran sent 25 ballistic missiles. Nobody died. No damage. We're not going to get excited about, I'm not going to let Netanyahu retaliate. And he told somebody, I'm calling him now to tell him not to retaliate. And indeed, he did call Netanyahu and told Netanyahu not to retaliate, not to shoot back, not to bomb Tehran, given that the Iranians have sent ballistic missiles towards Israel. Now, let's be clear what that means. That means ballistic missiles towards civilian population in Israel. Something that you would think, the UN would condemn, the European Union would condemn, the Americans would condemn, the whole world would condemn. I mean, this is blind, dumb, ballistic missiles shot into residential areas in Israel. But no, of course, the world would never condemn that. Killing Israelis is absolutely legit resistance, I think they call it. Anyway, Netanyahu was like, we have to keep up appearances. We can't, if they bomb us and we don't retaliate, they'll keep bombing and our deterrence will go away. Peace through strength. Remember that, Trump? I don't know if he said that, but remember that. And Trump said, no, I don't want you to retaliate. Don't start a war on me. I've got to deal with Iran. The deal. It's gonna be signed Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I mean, it's gonna be signed this week. I promise you. And if it's not signed, America will join Israel. We'll destroy the Iranians. And Netanyahu was thinking in his head, yeah, one more threat Trump has made that he hasn't lived up to. Can't trust this guy for a second. So anyway, he kind of concluded the conversation by saying, I don't know, we'll see. Non-committal, right? At least according to reports. Who knows what actually happened. Then Israel convenes its security thing, and they decide to retaliate, and they do. They first bomb a number of military facilities, and then they go after the entire air defense system, the new air defense system that the Iranians have installed, probably Chinese. They destroy it. They also bomb a petrochemical plant. This is in like 2 rounds. In between those rounds, the Iranians launch again. So Israel's gone after. They bombed in Beirut. They bombed in Tabriz and maybe one or two other places. Again, they've taken out their defense systems to prepare for a bigger thing, and they're preparing. They basically got a couple of hundred Israeli airplanes on the tarmac, ready to launch a third and probably devastating attack on the Iranians, which might have included leadership figures and command and control centers and other things. I don't know. Maybe there was even talk about taking out oil and gas and power plants. At this point, the Iranians call Trump, or somebody, somebody calls Trump from the Iranian side or representing the Iranians and says to Trump, Iran is willing to stop now. No more firing on Israel today. If Israel will stop, and we can start talking again about negotiations tomorrow. And Trump goes, yes, all right, this is cool. I'm so excited. So he calls Netanyahu up, and he tells Netanyahu, you got to stop. This is it. You did your thing. You bombed them. You showed that you would not sit idly by, and you bombed them. We get it. And Netanyahu said, okay. And they basically called off the attack, and they stopped. It's very reminiscent of in the 12-day war, if you remember. Trump had negotiated a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and then Iran launched another barrage of missiles in Israel, and Israel had over 100 airplanes over the skies of Tehran, ready to launch a devastating, crushing blow to the regime. And Trump called BB and had them fly back to Israel. So this is Trump's MO. He stops Israel from finishing or pursuing the goal every opportunity he has. So, that's where it stood. Today, everybody's standing down. The Iranians are standing down. The Israelis are standing down. The Iranians, by the way, today are saying, yeah, there's no deal with Trump. We're not interested in a deal. We're not going to compromise. Trump knows what we want. If he gives it to us, fine. But we're not budging an inch. So Trump keeps saying there's a deal imminent any day now. In a day or two, there's going to be a deal. And the Iranians are like, nah, none of that is true. None of that is true. So it's really hard to say whether Trump is just delusional, whether he's just lost the plot, and he really somehow believes for some reason, in some way, that there is a deal out there, or he's being spoon-fed nonsense by his advisors, Witkoff, J.D. Vance, maybe others, I don't know. It's really hard to tell because Trump keeps saying there's going to be a deal, there's going to be a deal. He kept setting deadlines. The deadlines come and go. No deal. And this is what's unique about Trump. That doesn't seem to bother him. Like his failure repeatedly and his drawing of red lines and repeatedly violating it doesn't register. There's no consciousness there. I mean, it really is bizarre. I've never seen anybody like this. I've never seen anybody threaten as much as he threatens and then not do anything about it. Nothing. Nada, zero. I've never seen anybody make predictions about this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and when it doesn't happen, just keep predicting it's going to happen in the future without any qualms, any problems. I've never seen anybody believe his own bullshit as much as Trump believes his own bullshit. I mean, it really is somebody needs to do a study on this. It's a unique psychological phenomena that I have never experienced before. I don't know about you guys. I mean, every single day he threatens and he puts a deadline and he commits to a deal and he commits to all these things, and every single day it doesn't happen, and every single day he redoes it. And now he's putting pressure on Israel to sacrifice its national security, to sacrifice its deterrence capabilities for his own primacy of consciousness delusions of deal making. I mean, I really do think he's being advised by morons. They don't understand the nature of the Iranian regime. They don't understand how much suffering the Iranian regime is willing to put its own people through. They don't understand religious fanaticism, or they should, because some of them are. They don't understand Islamic religious fanaticism. Juan actually makes a good point on the chat. He makes a good point. He says, Yaron, you haven't watched Doomsday Cults very much then, haven't you? You're right. I mean, it's exactly like a Doomsday Cult. Remember the Doomsday Cults? This is the end. This is the day of reckoning. Jesus is coming, and this is it. This is, I mean, indeed, Christianity has been a doomsday cult from day one. Like, Jesus kept predicting the end of the world, and Paul did, and then, for a few hundred years, they kept doing it until they figured out, well, maybe we should stop. And then only subsects, within the bigger Christian community did it. But yes, millennial cults or generally death cults, constantly, doomsday cults constantly do this. And Trump, but Trump is not that, I guess. Anyway, it's stunning. What else do I want to tell you? Why did Netanyahu attack Iran? Well, there are really two reasons. There are two reasons Netanyahu really had to attack Iran. One is, this is Israeli strategic doctrine. This is self-defense 101. Israel cannot afford, in terms of its security, to not retaliate when attacked. It has to have deterrent power. It lives in too dangerous of a neighborhood, has too many enemies, to allow the enemy to think for a moment they have one up on Israel and that Israel will not respond. So just strategically, he had to do something. And the fear was that if it didn't, well, what happens next time when Israel attacks Beirut? Well, Israel not attack Beirut because now they're afraid of Iranian attacks. Iran, by the way, at the end of this tit for tat for tit for tat for tit for tat, announced that from now on, any activity of Israel in southern Lebanon, not just in Beirut, would warrant a missile attack. They haven't lived up to that because the fact is that Israel today has been bombing all over southern Lebanon, and the Iranians haven't done anything about it because Israel responded. And they do not want to piss off the Israelis. And by the way, Israel taking out their air defense system means Israel now can again, for the next few days at least until they rearm, basically fly around Iran freely. And they know that. So that's reason number one, Netanyahu did it. Strategically, he had to. Reason number two is there's an election coming up. Israel will have an election in the fall. The likely date that I'm seeing right now that people are predicting is October 20th. October 20th, Israel will have a key election. Netanyahu, this is the first election since October 7th. The opposition is strong. It's going to be very close. it's likely the opposition wins but cannot form a government because it doesn't have a majority of 51% without the Arab parties in the Knesset. The Arabs tend to be far left or Islamist, or some of the political parties are Islamist, some of them are far left, and typically Israel doesn't form a coalition with them in the government. It has in the past, once. So Netanyahu is worried about the election. If he had not attacked yesterday, then his political career would be over. He would have lost that election big time. He would have been portrayed by his critics as a lackey of Donald Trump, as too cowardly to stand up for Trump, as bad for Israel because he's making Israel just what do you call it? Completely dependent on the United States for its own self-defense. And he wouldn't have survived that. He would not have survived that. So Netanyahu had to do it for political reasons. Just like Trump thinks he needs a deal for political reasons. He doesn't. He needs to win for political reasons. But he doesn't understand that. People don't understand that the thing that gets you the most votes, pretty much in any context, is victory. So Netanyahu did it for those two reasons. One, it's the right thing to do, and it's Israel's strategy, and it's self-defense. The second is political. If he doesn't do it, he loses the election. Big time. He probably lose it anyway. And really, how well Netanyahu does in the election between now and October is going to depend on Trump. To the extent that, Israel can win this war, Israel is perceived as having a free hand in crushing the Iranians. If Israel can pacify Hezbollah, then Netanyahu is a good shot. And of course, that all depends on Trump allowing Israel to do it. Israel can do all those things, but will Trump allow Israel to do it? If Trump cuts a bad deal with Iran, and the only deal I think Trump could cut with Iran is a bad deal, and Netanyahu can't do anything to stop it, then it's a good chance he loses the next election, and maybe by a big margin. Every day that there's more talk of a deal is a day that, according to polling, Netanyahu is losing support and the opposition is gaining support. By the way, during his media appearances and after his talk with Netanyahu, he basically said, Trump said, I'm going to cut a deal with Iran. Israel has no say in the matter. They will do as they are told. The more Trump talks like that, the less successful Bibi will be in the election. Israelis don't want to think of themselves as a dependent state. They don't want to think themselves as, beholden to America on everything. Indeed, Netanyahu's just put out a plan on how to eliminate all money from the United States. Within a decade, he should really do it within 4 years. Israel is building out a defense industry and building out defense capabilities so that they can be as independent as possible. So, at the end of the day, Israel achieved what it wanted over the weekend. It checked the Iranian attempt to restrict their freedom of action against Hezbollah. And they did it in spite of the fact that the United States put huge amount of pressure on them not to act. Iran, in its missile attacks against Israel, hit nothing. It suffered a few hits on its military, nothing huge, but it's incredibly exposed. The Israeli Air Force can do what it wants in Iran. It proved it again this weekend, and the Iranians know it. What did Iran gain this weekend? It's huge what Iran gained. Iran gained renewed sense that Trump is desperate for a deal. Desperate. Desperate enough to put huge amount of pressure on Netanyahu not to retaliate a blatant attack on his own country. And by the way, think about this. Over the last week, U.S. assets are being hit by the Iranians in Kuwait. The airport in Kuwait was, one of the terminals was destroyed. We already know that the UAE has been attacked. And now, supposedly today, Iran attacked U.S. bases in Iraq. And all of these clear, unequivocal violation of the ceasefire. And what has Trump done about any of these? Nothing. Nada, nothing. There was some talk at some point, we're going to use the Iranian frozen assets to rebuild the Kuwaiti airport. But nothing actually happened. They haven't released those monies for that purpose, and they won't. I know the extent of American weakness. I just find it incomprehensible, and I'm really finding it hard to convey to you guys just how. I mean, America's got the mightiest military force in all of human history, and it's being cowered. It's literally being cowered, brought to its knees by a pathetic, weak, ridiculous Iranian regime. Because Trump can't handle the heat. It is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling how weak Trump is right now. And just think of the Chinese watching this, or the Russians watching this, or anybody watching this. This is weaker. What's happened over the last few weeks is significantly weaker than Biden's exit from Afghanistan, which was a disaster. But that had visuals. So that's stuck in people's heads. What's going on right now doesn't have any visuals. It really is stunning. America's being attacked. American bases are being attacked. American troops are being attacked. Americans are being, injured. And the U.S. does nothing other than watch and pray and beg for a deal. So Iran gained valuable strategic currency and insight. It's clear that the U.S. is desperate for a deal, even a very bad and humiliating deal. The U.S. will take it. And now all the Iranians have to do is figure out how to calibrate this. How humiliating do they want it to be? All right. Now, in the background, just to give you some more color to this, in the background, the Gulf states basically called Trump asking him to restrain Israel. And here's the pattern. The Gulf states have basically communicated a very clear message to Trump. We will support you. We will support Israel if the purpose is regime change and you go all in, all out, and do it and win. What we will not support is one of these cycles, tit for tat cycles of violence, because they're afraid of getting hurt and they're afraid of not getting, at the end of their whole thing, their facilities will be destroyed and there'll be no regime change. Trump in his second call to Netanyahu said, "You did what you did. Now hold your fire. We're heading towards an agreement." And then Iran today comes out and says, "No, we're not." Yeah. So again, Trump to the Financial Times said, "The Netanyahu will have no choice but to accept any deal the United States negotiates with Iran." "I'm the one who decides," Trump said. "Netanyahu doesn't decide. Netanyahu will have no choice but to accept a deal with Iran." All right. Let's see. Now, there was an interesting story last week. And this is a story I told you, a couple of months ago when the war was going on. You remember there was a point in the war, Israel and the United States are bombing, and there's a story that comes out that the United States and Israel are arming the Kurds to attack the IRGC, to enter from Iraq, and to attack the Iranians on their western front in western Iraq. And at the last minute, the whole thing was called off. Well, it turns out that this was a plan developed by the Mossad with the help of the CIA to overthrow the Iranian regime. This is one element within a larger plan. And that the Kurds were ready, they were armed, and somebody leaked the story to Erdogan, the Turkish president. Now, as I told you at the time, I speculated this is what happened. Erdogan does not want the Kurds to be successful. He considers them his enemy. So he immediately called Trump and convinced Trump to abandon the Kurdish invasion, which would have supposedly accelerated regime change in Iran. And this is not the first time that Erdogan has convinced Trump not to support the Kurds and to back off plans. John Bolton describes another example in his book from the first term. Erdogan, another authoritarian dictator, has Trump's number. They know exactly what to say to him, how to talk to him, how to get him on their side. So Trump prevented the Kurds from going in. Now, who leaked it to Erdogan? Well, the dramatic report last week suggested that it was Vice President J.D. Vance, who has been anti this war from the beginning, is the one who actually leaked it. So it's J.D. Vance who let Erdogan convince Trump to back off. All right, let's see. Anything else I want to say about this? No, I think we're good. So, yeah, that is Israel-Iran, Lebanon, Trump. Happy to take any questions you have on all of this, but ongoing story. We will find out in the hours and days to come how this will develop. This is not the end of the story, clearly. Right? Not the end of the story, clearly. Yeah. Basically, no. No breaking news on that front, at least not right now. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about Russia. For years now, I've been telling you Russia's in big trouble, and I think it continues to be. On the front line, it seems to be losing more ground than gaining. The Ukrainian military seems to be really pushing the Russians backward, not because of ground movement, but because the drones are making supplying the troops at the front line impossible. It is making it impossible for the troops on the front line to be on the front line because they're constantly being attacked by drones. And, net on net, every month now that goes by, Ukraine gains more ground than Russia is gaining ground. So Russia basically is left with just bombing the hell out of Ukrainian cities, civilian population. A few nights ago, this was about a week ago, Russia launched 729 drones and missiles against Ukraine in one night. Most of them targeting the city of Kiev. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force downed a total of 642. That leaves almost 100 that actually made it. And there were casualties as a consequence of this. But, that is not the only front. Of course, Ukraine constantly is launching drones into Russia, deep into Russia. We've talked about this before. Reaching oil facilities, refineries, docks that are responsible for the export of oil. And just last week, they bombed a big oil facility and a weapons facility in St. Petersburg. Just as there was a big economic conference in St. Petersburg, and you could see in the background massive explosions and fires going on. They are demoralizing the Russians, and they are destroying their oil infrastructure. They've also basically cut off the road that leads from Russia to Crimea along what used to be the Ukrainian shoreline on the Black Sea with drones. They're basically targeting any supply trucks that are traveling along this road. They are attacking. One of the advantages the Ukrainians have is they've actually developed a system by which they get real-time satellite intelligence from commercial satellites. And the drone operator can actually use that to target the drone, send it on its way. So not only do they have all the conventional ways of detecting targets, they now have commercial satellites that they can basically get information from. This has dramatically improved the speed and precision of Ukrainian drone attacks. They use Starlink for the internet. They don't use Starlink for intelligence gathering of locations. For that, you need satellites that are actually taking photos of what's going on the ground. And usually commercial satellite companies take those photos, but you don't get it in real time. Ukraine has managed to sign contracts with these companies to get it in close to real time, close enough for them to be able to use it in their drone attacks. There's an extensive story about this in the Wall Street Journal today. Supposedly the technology is a transatlantic collaboration between Ventor, a Dutch geospatial intelligence company, and Bravo One Alpha, a US-based persistent systems, together with and in collaboration with the Ukrainian defense firm Burevy. And this technology is being delivered directly to troops, in the border area who are managing the drones. Incredibly powerful. Basically, Ukraine has developed into by far the best equipped army in Europe. Not because it had tanks, not because it had airplanes, but because it has mastered, like no army in history, it has mastered the use of drones, both in attack mode and in defense mode. It has the best defensive capabilities against drones. The Israelis could use their help right now. And the best offensive capabilities against drones. But Russia's losing on other fronts as well. They can't afford this war. The senior government officials have warned Russian President Putin that spending on the war in Ukraine is on an unaffordable path. It risks government budget deficits widening dangerously. Remember, Russia does not have access to global borrowing markets. Officials in the finance ministry and the central bank have proposed new cuts to defense spending. But of course, Minister of Defense is having none of that. The Russian economy is spiraling. It's getting worse. I've told you from day one, quality of life, standard of living has gone down. But inflation's high. The ruble is down. And deficits exploding, which only suggests even more inflation in the future. So Russia's in trouble economically and financially. But here's the other front Russia's in trouble in. Russia used to have countries around the world, really, mainly in Europe, that it had real influence in. And where it was hoping that in elections, it could put people who are friendly to it in power. Maybe the best example of that is Hungary, where they had Orban, who was friendly to Putin and who did everything in his power to slow down the EU and to slow down NATO's support for Ukraine. Orban is lost and is out. They were hoping that in Romania and Moldova, they could put enough money into the political campaign so that pro-Russia political parties would win. And that those political parties would create problems for the EU and NATO in supporting Ukraine. In both Romania and Moldova, they have lost. Finally, this happened this weekend. Russia's had a long-time relationship with Armenia. They supported Armenia in its conflict with Azerbaijan in the past, and Armenia was considered the ally of Russia in the Caucasus. But Armenia has been disappointed by Russia. When Azerbaijan attacked it a couple of years ago, the Russians did not help. When they look at the performance of Russian weapon systems, their own, the ones that Russia uses in Ukraine, they're not impressed. And Armenia has come to the conclusion, quite definitively, that they would much rather ally themselves with Europe than with Russia. And indeed, in this latest election over the weekend, not only did the pro-Europe political parties win, but they won by a margin much greater than anything that anybody expected. Armenians have basically lost faith in Russia, and they're distancing themselves from it, even though it's a threat not far from their border. I don't think Russia is going to take military action against Armenia. I think they're too busy. But this is a big deal. Right? I mean, Georgia is under Russia's thumb right now. But Armenia's break with Russia is big deal. It strengthens Europe. It also strengthens Turkey. Turkey has always been Armenia's enemy. Armenians genocide by the Turks. But they are now getting closer. Armenia has more to gain from Turkey than it did from Russia. And again, you know, it's a huge setback for Putin, huge setback for Russia more broadly. And the Kremlin's sphere of influence is shrinking. It's certainly shrinking. It's certainly shrinking in Europe, Caucasus being part of Europe or Asia. I mean, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has turned into, and I told you this in the first months of the war, it's turned into a geopolitical strategic catastrophe for Russia. Remember all the countries that joined NATO? Finland, Norway, or was it Finland and Sweden? Sorry, Finland and Sweden. That was huge. And the fact that Europe has come together to form a front to oppose Russia, that is huge. But on top of that, Russia has lost all of its satellites, all of its sphere of influence. It's just collapsing all around them. Armenia chose Europe over Russia, unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly. And they're going to have a peace deal with Azerbaijan. And, you know, they're going to reform their economy, and they're going to be in much better shape, the Armenians, than if they'd stayed with in the Russian sphere of influence. All right, this is kind of a, I don't know if you watched this over the weekend. Donald Trump went and he did an interview with NBC. I guess he went all the way to Wisconsin for this interview. I'm not sure exactly why. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of farm equipment in the background as this woman is interviewing him. And as soon as it got to January 6th and then the 2020 elections, Trump just lost it. I mean, he completely lost it. Again, the guy is nuts. So Walker, the interviewer, says, do you think anyone who attacks police officers on January 6th should get taxpayer money? Trump says, I can tell you this, 97% of those folks, you look at them, the FBI or whoever it was, you had a lot of crooked cops. They had FBI agents ushering them in. You had a bunch of dirty cops. Right? Welker says, there's no evidence of that. Trump says, try looking at the tapes. Welker, 172 people did plead guilty to assaulting police officers. Trump says, you know why they pled guilty? They were told they were going to jail for 15 years. They pled guilty because they were frightened. They went down and were ushered into the building. So no, all that video, all those pictures that I remember seeing live of people beating up cops, of breaking windows, of climbing up the side of the building, of people trying to assault police, threatening police, of people looking for Congress people that they can, and chanting to hang Pence. All of that, all of us made up. We pretended it. We didn't really see it. All of that is just make-believe. Again, I don't know if he believes it. I think at this point he does. I think at this point he said it enough times that he has convinced himself this was true. And he's got enough conspiracy theory nutcases around him that he is now convinced that this is the truth. That the whole January 6th was dirty cops in the FBI. It's all a conspiracy theory, guys. This is the President of the United States of America. It disgusts me even to say that. Spreading conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories that are blatantly false and that contradict what we saw with our own eyes. He then goes on and claims fraud in the 2020 election. He won by a landslide, stolen votes, stolen this. And Walker says, just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. Trump says, there's a lot of evidence. By the way, by this point, he's red in the face. I mean, you look at the video, it's shocking how red he is. He says there's a lot of evidence. There's a tremendous evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged, and it's happening again in California. They're cheating. Notice how this is prep for the election later this year. Walker, do you have evidence? Trump says, all I have to do is look. Walker, that's not evidence. The local officials acknowledge they are slow. Trump, they're crooked, just like you're crooked. You're either crooked or stupid. And he gets up and leaves the interview, right in the middle. It's, I mean, this guy's a joke. Just like you're crooked, Meet the Press is crooked. She says, to be fair, I'm not crooked. And he says, really? You play right into their hands. You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands. You know the elections are, your network knows they're rigged. You know I won in a landslide. I got 94% bad press. You've never presented evidence that it was rigged. You have more evidence. There's more evidence. There he goes on. And then ultimately he just gets up and leaves. He walks up. After he's, I mean, it's hard to get a face to be that red. Maybe it's just the coloring on my screen. My God. All I can do is say, I told you so. I did. I told you so. And a lot of you gave me a really, really, really hard time. But this guy's nuts. He's completely lost the plot. Anyway, one of the Trump administration's big goals in life is to stop immigration. And I know some of you are going, no, just illegal immigration. No. One of their big goals in life is to stop legal immigration. In particular, they want to stop H1B immigrants. And they are doing everything they can to make that happen. So for example, they are inflating the wages, the minimum wage that an H1B employee can receive. Now, this is clearly against the law. The law specifies clearly in legislation how H1B is supposed to work, what the wages need to be. It's an average wage. The wage rule is based on percentage of wages in occupational category, an area required under the rule. Under the rule, it's clear. The numbers are clear depending on the entry level, depending on the qualifications of the person. What that entry level, the first salary they get, H1B needs to be. And they are trying to. Department of Labor is trying to artificially inflate those numbers to make it so none of these immigrants qualify. That's one. Second, you remember that the Trump administration, an executive order saying that in order to get an H1B, you had to pay $100,000 payment requirement. Well, a court today, or today, I think it was today, ruled on this. Basically, what the court found was that the $100,000 fee is basically a tax to get this visa. And the court says that only Congress can impose a tax. That a president cannot simply tax Indians or H1B recipients because he doesn't like them. You just can't do that. There are laws. We are still a country of laws. So a federal judge vacated Trump's policy imposing a $100,000 fee to employers' H1B visa applications. It violated the Federal Administrative Procedure Act and the Constitution, according to the judge. Found that the payment is a tax that Congress had not delegated to the executive branch. Of course, this will be appealed by the Trump administration. Might even go to the Supreme Court. Finally. There is a bill now being introduced by Chip Roy, conservative, House member, basically an attempt to end or to dramatically restrict H-1B visas, and certainly restrict them as a pathway to permanent residency. Look, H-1B visas are not the best way to do this. Lotteries is a stupid ways to do it. But the hostility of this administration towards legal immigrants is absurd and ridiculous. These are the most productive immigrants we have. Again, I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but was it over 50% of all successful startups have a immigrant who came in by an H-1B as a founder? They disproportionately work for successful startups and unicorns that do really, really well in the future. They dramatically add to the standard of living, quality of life of Americans. Somebody says, oh, this will reduce housing demand. Maybe a little bit, but it reduces wealth much more than it does housing. So it reduces the amount of jobs available. It reduces high-paying jobs for Americans. Every immigrant who comes here on an H-1B visa creates more jobs than they take. And therefore make it possible for more Americans to afford homes. So no, it's just ridiculous. And it's hostility. It's hostility to the other. It's hostility to migrants. It's hostility to people who don't look like you, come from a different culture than you. It's not solving any economic problem. It's creating many more problems. It's reducing the wealth of Americans. It's reducing the quality of life of Americans. But politically, it plays great. There's so many people out there who are resentful, who hate, who are convinced that their failure in life is the consequence not of their own decisions, not of how they've lived their lives, but whatever problems they have in life is the fault of some immigrant, some other person who's taken their job away from them or lowered their standard of living or raised the price of their house. All of which is false. So, I mean, again, I told you that this administration was never just about illegal immigration. It was always about immigration in total. And by going after immigrants, legal and illegal, you're devastating the U.S. economy. You're violating individual rights. You're turning this country into something that it never was and shouldn't be. You're being un-American. Fundamentally at the heart of it, it's un-American. And when it comes to hostility towards people like, for example, towards Indians, what else other than racism could it be? It's not because they use welfare. They don't. They're very successful immigrants. It's not because they don't assimilate. They do. It takes a generation or two, just like all immigrants, but they assimilate really well. Anyway, it's just the idea of, we gain nothing, zero, zilch, nada, and we lose a huge amount by restricting immigrants. All right. And, at the end of the day, what you really get is a massive violation of rights. Rights of Americans. Rights of Americans to hire whoever they want. Rights of Americans to associate with whoever they want. Rights of Americans to invite anybody they want into their home or into their business. It's the rights of Americans that are violated, in addition to the rights of the immigrants. Every single time You go after illegal immigrants or legal immigrants like they're doing right now. And that's what makes it so damn un-American. All right. Fascinating story today in the Wall Street Journal. This is the title. The world's most surprising economic success story is, drumroll, North Korea. It turns out that over the last 3 years, North Korea has seen an economic boom. Now, the economic boom has one primary source. It's not that communism suddenly works. And it's not that North Korea has dramatically reformed its economy. Although, in some segments of the economy, it leaves people alone, which allows for some economic growth. No. Over the last few years, as the article demonstrates, North Korea has been the armory of Russia. It's been supplying Russia with artillery shells, missiles, equipment, and that money is being plowed into building nice buildings all over Pyongyang, all over the capital. The capital has grown dramatically. Very little is affecting the countryside, but the capital has grown dramatically. Nice, shiny buildings, new electric cars everywhere. Everybody has a smartphone made in North Korea, stolen intellectual property. And so it's arms sales to Russia, but it's more than arms sales. Remember, the North Koreans sent troops. They actually sent their people to die. Something like a third of all the troops sent to the Ukrainian front by the North Koreans were killed. Well, all those troops, North Korean government got a lot of money for sending the troops. So yes, money has been flowing in. And China has been helping. Giving loans, providing capital, building. But the real driver of economic growth in North Korea is the war in Ukraine. They will be horribly deflated when the war in Ukraine ends. So it is a misleading title. Don't read the story, but don't be confused by real wealth creation and by being able to churn out a lot of missiles and artillery shells as a form of wealth creation. As soon as the war in Ukraine is over and Russia doesn't need them anymore, this economy will collapse back onto itself. Supposedly they've grown like 3.7% in the last year. And, the capital has grown significantly just in size, footprint. You can see that in satellite pictures. It's also nighttime light intensity has tripled since 2019. Again, all of that is money coming in from Russia into the government coffers for military assistance and, again, for sending some of their own population, to the battlefield, to the front line to die. So it's human sacrifice. The North Korean government is basically selling their own people into kind of a slavery and generating revenue that way. So, yeah. All right, finally, our human achievement stories. We always want to end the show with some positive stories. I know some of you want me to actually start the show with positive stories. I mean, that's a little bit too much, I think, even for me. Anyway, here's story number one on the positive front. Driverless trucks. Driverless trucks is huge. Trucks, most of fatalities in car accidents are from accidents involving trucks. Driverless trucks are much safer than trucks with drivers. Driverless trucks, the driver doesn't fall asleep, doesn't lose attention, doesn't speed. But we now have them on the roads. Pepsi company, soft drink company, but also seller of Dorito chips, has 41 trucks on the road in Arizona, Texas, and Arkansas that are basically driverless. Right? They're running on Arizona roads. It's the first major U.S. consumer goods company to disclose the real-life, large-scale use of autonomous trucks on public roads. They're traversing busy highways and local streets as they transport PepsiCo's products, this is from the Wall Street Journal article, between bottling plant, storage facilities, and stores like Walmart and Dollar General. At least 9 autonomous truck companies are operating in southern and south central states, especially Texas, but many still have human monitors at the wheel or are being used only in limited tests. PepsiCo's operation, using trucks outfitted with sensors and computers from an autonomous truck company called Gatik, is a step beyond, on par with the technical hurdles being cleared by many small, lighter, driverless passenger taxis from Waymo, Tesla, and other companies. These operations that we're running today are real, says Jim Farrell, the PepsiCo Senior Vice President of Supply Chain. They're running in multiple markets in a live network, not like some experimental test environment. PepsiCo has 5 more trucks on the roads in Texas and 1 in Arkansas. The medium-duty and heavy-duty box trucks are manufactured by Isuzu Motors, collaborating with Gatik in design and production. The truck has multiple cameras mounted at the front and back, as well as radar and LiDAR equipment that help determine what's on the road inside the cab. There remains a steering wheel and air conditioning, as well as 3 iPad-sized screens showing the footage from the external cameras and the computer vision system, similar to the autopilot displays in Tesla cars. The truck never goes over the speed limit. It stays in its lane, never goes to sleep, and, it's probably limited by having to be charged because these are electric, right? But the next generation of these trucks won't have a steering wheel. They won't even have a cab. They'll continue to have air conditioning systems to cool the onboard computers, but no cab, no steering wheel. And this is going to be pretty amazing. PepsiCo has one of the largest fleets of autonomous trucks in the U.S., but it has other clients. More than 20 of its trucks are currently ferrying goods in the Toronto area for Loblaw, Canada's largest retailer. This is amazing. In many respects, this is bigger than autonomous taxis because this is going to have a bigger impact on traffic accidents and human lives lost than the taxis are going to have. According to PepsiCo, the driverless trucks are more reliable than human drivers. The on-time arrival performance from driverless trucks reached 99%. After factoring out uncontrollable variables like weather and traffic. As we said, incredibly safe. Driverless trucks perform best when they shuttle back and forth in repetitive trips. For instance, a 14-mile trip between a Gatorade bottling plant and a storage facility. That route has fewer variables compared with routes that have more pickups and deliveries. When the driverless truck delivers to stores, they may face more issues like congestion and occupied docks. So, yeah, this is just the beginning, but it is a revolution, and it's happening. It's happening all around us. It's happening every day. It's super exciting. Super exciting. All right, let's see. Where is this? Yeah, this is an interesting one. So, you know how when you get Parkinson's, if you've seen people with Parkinson's, you start getting tremors. You can't control them. Maybe at the beginning you can, but it's hard to control. And it's hard to keep it still. You know, it makes work really, really hard. It makes concentrating really, really hard. And it's distracting. It's very difficult to lift a cup of coffee. And for many people, this is how Parkinson's disease starts. It's not a dramatic collapse. It's usually something small. You learn to hide, something twitching, a hand that can no longer hold a glass of water. And, you know, these tremors are incredibly destructive to human life. There are 10 million people worldwide that live with Parkinson's, that have essential tremor. And there's another 10 million that have something called essential tremor, a separate condition that causes the same uncontrollable shaking without the other Parkinson's symptoms. And, you know, some medications help until it doesn't. And there's surgery in the brain. But there's now a new treatment, a treatment developed by an Israeli company. It's spent 25 years building this. It's basically a sound waves that are guided by an MRI, focused on a precise spot deep in the brain. These beams of sound waves converge on a single spot. They create a small therapeutic lesion, and the tremors stop. No incision, no implant, no general anesthesia. On treatment day, the patient head is shaved, so nothing interferes with the ultrasound beams. The head grows back naturally afterwards. They lie inside an MRI machine, which acts as the eyes of the entire procedure, guiding the sound waves in real time and monitoring the temperature of the target tissue with sub-millimeter precision. The physician adjusts everything from the control room. The patient is awake throughout and can tell the physician exactly what they're feeling. Focused ultrasound provides tremor control without surgical incision with minimal complications. For many patients, the tremor relief is immediate and it lasts. According to data of this company, it's maintained for at least 6 years. Now, this is huge. It's huge. I mean, imagine somebody who's constantly shaking, having those tremors disappear. Anyway, this treatment is now available. It's an Israeli startup that's been working on this. And again, it's the advancement in medicine just off the charts. They're stunning. All right, finally, NASA has the X-59 aircraft. It's been developing a supersonic aircraft, right? Well, for the first time, on Friday, it flew faster than the speed of sound. Now, one of the things that's unique about the X-59 is that it does not have a sonic boom. So it flew at Mach 1.4 without, well, no, it didn't fly. They expect it to fly at 1.4 in the next few days. But they flew at 1.1 Mach, that's 1.1 times the speed of sound, with no sonic boom. and it's getting ready for its, the airplane's first flight on October 28th, 2025. They've made tremendous progress, but again, it flew 1.1 for the first time over the speed of sound for the first time on Friday. Now, we should note that Boom, the private company, flew their airplane at supersonic speeds, what is it, a year ago? Almost a year ago? Also, with no supersonic boom, even though the company's called Boom, it didn't do boom. That is Blake Scholl's company, and it beat NASA. But what's exciting about all this is we now have multiple airplanes. They can fly at supersonic speeds, or will be able to fly at supersonic speeds, with no sonic boom, that can be used for commercial purposes. Within 10, certainly 15 years, we could see a real revolution in airplanes, in commercial flight. The X-59 is the centerpiece of NASA's Quest mission, which aims to demonstrate quiet supersonic flight and help enable commercial supersonic flight over land worldwide. These advancements will help travelers reach their preferred destination faster, spending less time in the air. Of course, again, Boom is at the forefront of these developments. And of course, Boom is a completely private company, unlike NASA. So another area, driverless cars, driverless trucks, healthcare, another area where there's huge progress being made is supersonic flight. And I can't wait for that as much as I travel. The ability to cross the Atlantic or cross the Pacific or cross the United States in very short times is going to change travel completely. And it's not going to be much more expensive. So it's going to be affordable, fast. It's going to change. Certainly business travel is going to change completely. You'll be able to fly to London from New York, fly back to New York same day. It solves a lot of jet lag issues when you don't have to spend 10, 12 hours in a plane. It really is going to shift and change the way we think about international travel. So I'm excited, and coast-to-coast travel. So I'm super excited about that. All right, my friends, that is the news for this Monday, June 8th. I hope everybody is having a great week. All right, let's move to our super chats. Let me just see. One second. I want to remind everybody of our sponsors. We have Alex Epstein, who is, the number one world authority on everything to do with energy and fossil fuels and environmental issues, in permitting issues in Congress. He also lobbies. He's a powerhouse. You should follow him. You should, you'll learn so much. You'll become a better communicator because he does these talking points, publishes talking points. And you'll learn a lot about what's going on in Washington. Some good stuff about what's going on in Washington in terms of these kind of issues. So follow alexepstein.substack.com. You can also get, I think, Alex AI, which will answer any question you have with answers from Alex. The Enman Institute wants to remind you that that you can sign up for ARI live courses. If you want to heighten your philosophical clarity and amplify your ability to analyze issues, like I do on this show, then I'd highly recommend checking out ARI's live courses. These courses are designed to help you learn and apply objectivism to improve your life at all levels, from personal to the professional to the political. Upcoming courses include Communicating Ideas, Writing 1, taught by Keith Lockitch, Foundations of Physical Science 3, Optics and the Nature of Light, also taught by Keith. The Philosophy of Objectivism, Normative Principles, with recorded lectures by Dr. Onkar Ghate and discussion sessions with Mike Mazza, with Dr. Mike Mazza. Plus my course on globalization. Who needs it? So my course, Defending Globalization, starts in a few weeks. As a Yaron Brook Show listener, you can get a discount when you sign up. Remember the discount code 26YBS10. 26YBS10. Go to aynrand.org/YBS, aynrand.org/YBS. That's YBS for Yaron Brook Show. Check it out. All right, we got Hendershot, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. Hendershot is a wealth manager. They offer products that can save you a lot of money on capital gains. If you're selling a business, for example, and you're going to owe a lot of taxes, they have products that can save you some money on the tax bill. Check them out at Hendershot, 2Ts, wealth.com/YBS. Also, check out my interview with Robert Hendershot. It's on YouTube under playlists for sponsors. And finally, Defenders of Capitalism, Michael Williams' program, the Defense Capitalism from philosophical, political, economic, moral perspective. I have been involved in developing the materials. Check out the website, sign up for the newsletter, and follow along. And hopefully, if you have a venue that's interested in bringing out a speaker to talk about these things, we are happy to provide somebody. Finally, to support the show, really the best way to support the Yaron Brook Show is to do a monthly contribution on Patreon, patreon.com. Love to get 10 people this month, and 10 new people, not people switching from PayPal, but brand new people, to come onto Patreon and become paid subscribers. Don't just subscribe and for free, but become a paid subscriber. At $10 a month, you get the podcast with no commercials, no advertisements. At $250, you get one-on-one with me once every 3 months, $500 once a month, and the whole range of options in between, all the way from $2 to $1,000. Please consider supporting the show. It couldn't exist without support from listeners like you. You make the show happen, but only if you go to Patreon right now, sign up, and make a contribution. All right, we are doing really well in Super Chats today. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. We are $198 or $200 short of our third hour goal, but we made the second hour. That's great. A lot of it's due to stickers, people who just came in and did stickers, which is a trade, value for value. They're not asking a question. They're just saying, thanks, Yaron. Here's my payment for the value you provide, which is great. So thank you, Greg, for doing that. Let's see. Thank you, Capitalist Spy. Really appreciate it. Mary Aline, thank you. Justin, thank you. And let's see. Jacob, thank you. Adri, $50. Thank you. Really appreciate that. $50 sticker. Bonnie, thank you. Ryan, thank you. So thank you to all the sticker people. You too can be a sticker person and get thanked live on the show. Come on in and trade with me. Value for value. All right, and then we have our Super Chatters. So let's start with Super Chat with Liam with a 2-part question totaling $70. Thank you, Liam. It's very much appreciated. Liam says, part one. We all know that in the lead up to and during World War II, average German citizens hated Jews and wanted to see something done about it. But how many of them, in their own minds, were thinking, I wish they'd kill them all? How many were likely to say it out loud? No, they were surely thinking and saying more, moderate-sounding things and talking about how Jews are undermining German society. They weren't thinking the genocide per se. They were just enabling it. That's absolutely right. Most people, I don't think, can bring themselves to think, kill them all. I think that's something very few people can actually hold. But when they're told to pull the trigger on the machine gun, when they're told to march them all into the gas chamber, they don't have any problem in doing that. So they were conditioned by years and years and years, decades of educational programs that told them that they must do their duty, that they must listen to authority, that they must not think for themselves. And they were conditioned that Jews are animals, rats, they're subhuman, and therefore their killing is meaningless. Just like you kill rats, you don't think twice about it. They shouldn't think twice about killing Jews. Few of them would have actually, if asked, promoted such a program. But once such a program existed to annihilate the Jews in World War II, they were not going to resist it. There was nothing in them that was capable of resisting it. They had accepted their duty, they'd accepted the necessity of this, and they didn't question it, and they facilitated and made it possible, and they were certainly not going to rebel against it. There were Nazis in the Nazi, there were people in the SS, there were doctors, there were scientists, there were the whole eugenics, German eugenics movement, which was heavily influenced by the American eugenics movement, which were, absolutely happy with exterminating the Jewish population. Most Germans knew it and didn't resist it, maybe even quietly supported it. And maybe were horrified with themselves after the fact. But while it was going on, they bought into it. The world would be a better place without the Jews. They convinced themselves. All right, not your average algorithm. Is there more hate than love in the world today, in America today? No, I don't think so. What you see online is hate, but that's not the reality of day-to-day life. Day-to-day life is about people who love their kids and love their spouses and love their job and love, in some cases, love their friends and their next door neighbors. I mean, there's a lot of love and positivity in the world around us. It's just the hate gets amplified. Hate is what sells. And hate is what people use social media to express because they could do that anonymously. But in most people's day-to-day lives, it's about love. It's about positive values. James, thoughts on Neil deGrasse Tyson? The left loves him, but he seems like an airhead. I don't know if he's an airhead, but he's very much lets ideology shape some of his scientific beliefs, and he's very conventional. He's very mainstream, particularly in defense of things like climate change. But he's also, I think, on many issues, a good science communicator. Just like, what's his name? Carl Sagan was an extraordinary science communicator, an extraordinary person, duped completely by climate change and environmentalism more broadly. And I think Neil deGrasse Tyson is very similar to that. He is completely bought into the environmentalist agenda, but he is a good science communicator. I don't think he's an airhead at all. And when it comes to communicating science, it's not easy to do. So you have to give credit where it's due. But again, he's very much influenced by leftist ideology, and that's unfortunate. James Taylor, does Trump make up alternative realities and believe his own lies? Yes, I think he does. Reality doesn't really have a standing in his mind. He has a primacy of consciousness, primacy of whim. He's a whim worshiper. And he convinces himself his lies are true. Convinces himself that lies are true. By the way, I don't know Neil deGrasse Tyson as well as I know Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan was exceptional. I mean, I loved his TV show. But, even with the environmentalist spin, he was really, really good. He was really, really good. Liam, our status of today not trying to destroy the motor of the world, just annoy the productive members of society through taxes and controls without stopping the motor formally. Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that anybody, statists, intellectuals, leftists, rightists, want to stop the motor of the world. Really want that explicitly and hold that. Again, I don't think you can actually hold that. You want everybody to die. They hold it implicitly. They can't even admit to themselves that that's what they want. And it's the effect that they have by the taxing and the harassing and the regulating and controlling. But they can't hold it. I want to stop. I want the world to stop. Production to stop. Science, technology to stop. But it's implicit in everything that they do, sadly. But they're just as bad as statists have always been. They're the same as statists have always been. And it's just a question of what they can get away with. Hopper Campbell, does Kant's philosophy make people sadistic and cruel? That's why there are so many sadists in Germany. There are so many sadists? I don't know. Look, there's a sense in which Kant's philosophy doesn't make people X. Kant's philosophy, it destroys your capacity to reason. And to the extent you take it seriously, it demotivates you away from pursuing your own self-interest, from happiness. And then what impact that has on you psychologically is going to vary widely. So Kant impacts the right, Nazis, the left, communists, and postmodernists. I mean, it all has its kind of origins in Kant. But in terms of somebody being a sadist or not, that's a psychological response to it. And I don't know there are more sadists in Germany than anywhere else. And I don't know that Kant's philosophy is more influential in Germany than anywhere else today. Again, Kant's philosophy's impact on the world today is through the intermediaries. The thousands of intermediaries between Kant and today. The philosophers, the intellectuals, the critics, the artists, the communicators, the people who've just constantly. So it's too simplistic to just blame everything on Kant. I mean, you have to be able to, if you're going to do that, you have to be able to make the case, like Leonard does in Ominous Parallels. But that's a detailed case, and he goes through all the intermediaries, how we got from Kant to the Nazis. Not your average algorithm. Are people today so disminded they can't help but merge into a group? They cannot conceive of independence. Well, again, you've got to. People are more complex than that. In some areas of their life, they are independent. Many people are very independent in their career, for example. But in certain areas of life, they are disminded. They choose not to use their mind. And that's where they gravitate towards groups and towards tribes. So people are complex beings, and they can be compartmentalized. But generally, as you lose your capacity to reason, or as you lose your will to reason, or as you stop using your mind, you are now at the, basically, all you've got is emotions and whim, and that's going to cause you to fail, and it's going to cause you to look for some comfort somewhere, and the tribe is usually the place in which you find comfort. So tribalism is a response to disminding, yes. But it doesn't mean that when people are disminded, they're disminded in everything. Look at all the progress we talk about, all the human achievement that's going on. Somebody's doing that. And it doesn't mean they're not pretty stupid when it comes to politics, for example. But they have a capacity to be independent in part of their life. Right, not your average algorithm. Do a lot of rich people think they have to be nasty to get to the top, or be nasty once they reach the top? I don't know. I don't know that that's true, either one of those. I know a lot of rich people. Most of them, overwhelming majority of them, are not nasty either to get to the top or at the top. I know a lot of people who've made, I know some billionaires, I know lots of millionaires, multimillionaires. Very few are nasty. Very few. What are your thoughts on Christopher Lang's critique of Rand and objectivism? I'm not familiar with Christopher Lang's critique of Rand and objectivism. Yeah, I haven't looked into it, so I'm happy to look into it and have an opinion, but at this point I don't have one. Send me a link to something he's written where he's criticized objectivism, or a video or something. Not your average algorithm. Is the point of altruism your own pain rather than anyone else's benefit? Even if no one benefits, as long as you are not happy, is that still altruism? Well, the point is, altruism is about sacrificing yourself. It's about rejecting the pursuit of your own values in favor of the other. And the other is usually other people. Now, whether they actually benefit from what you're doing or not is less of an issue. It's your intent. And it's the fact that you are worse off for it, which is the issue. So altruism is self-sacrifice for the sake of another. And it could be the poor, it could be the state, it could even be God, right? But the point is, you have to suffer and they benefit. Now, the justification is always the good for the other. But it's a false justification, because we know, for example, that self-interested people actually improve other people's lives more than altruistic people's. So at the heart of it is the rejection of self-interest. At the heart of it is the essential value in self-sacrifice. It's Jesus on a cross. It's the suffering. But if you're just suffering because you're depressed, that doesn't count, right? What counts is suffering for the sake of other people. That's what makes you moral. So just suffering for its own sake, that does not make you moral. It's suffering for the sake of others that makes you moral, according to altruism. Arthur, two-part question. Does the left want to restrict gun ownership because disarmed populations are easier to conquer, or because they think people or children in society would function better without firearms? Or does their altruism recoil at the idea of being egoistic enough to stand up to yourself with deadly force? I think it's mainly number two. I think they view people as irresponsible children that need to be, who are not responsible enough to have a gun. But they also, I think, it's an altruistic recoil against the idea of being, of self-defense and standing up for yourself. I don't think for the most people on the left, it's about controlling the population. Some people, I'm sure it is. The kind of the people who really think about revolution and turning America into a socialist, whatever. But most leftists who are against guns, I think, look, here's some facts, right? Murder rates in Europe are much, 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 much lower than the United States. They are in Japan and South Korea. All those places have very, very restrictive gun laws. I mean, it certainly looks like, if you compare countries, that when you restrict gun laws, you get less murders. Now, that's a too simplistic of an argument. I'm not making that argument. But I'm saying, why couldn't somebody be a leftist who believes that if you restrict gun ownership, people are less likely, when angry, to pull out a gun and shoot somebody? It's just harder to kill people. It's harder to murder people if you don't have access to a gun. Think about school shootings. Think about the guys who went to the mosque. Their access to guns made it so much easier. So I think it's a fact that if you could somehow magically take all the guns away from Americans, no guns in private homes in America, murder rates would plummet. They would, whether that's a justification or not. But, if you're a utilitarian and what you care about are murder rates, then you would be for gun control. And extensive gun control. Not limited gun control, extensive gun control. And there's plenty of evidence from around the world that where there are fewer guns, there are fewer murders, and certainly fewer murders by guns. But it's hard to replace guns in terms of a thing to murder, particularly if you're going to murder a lot of people. It's hard to do that with a knife or even with a car, right? But a gun is easy. So I think most leftists object because they view it as a way of reducing crime, particularly murder. But I do think this idea of they don't trust people and this idea that there's something too egoistic about self-defense is definitely part of it. Definitely part of it. And for certain people, the idea of disarming the population so you can control them also is part of it. But I don't think that's certainly not a majority of them. Michael, is America's economic freedom levels and culture of individualism marginally better than Western Europe or leaps and bounds ahead? I think at this point it's marginally better. In certain respects, it's leaps and bounds, entrepreneurial activity primarily. But that's the main thing, and everything else, it's just marginally better. Partially because Europe is more individualistic than it has been in its past, and partially because we've descended. So we are not as good as we used to be. Stephen, didn't Israel's weekend attack on Iran require U.S. assistance, such as mid-air refueling? Did Trump approve the assistance? No, it didn't. So there was no mid-air refueling. The United States did not assist Israel, from what I've read. Israel has refueling tankers. It can do the refueling itself. It doesn't have to. I think a major attack with over 100 airplanes would need American assistance. That didn't happen, although they were getting ready for one. So It's also true that some of the attacks on the Iranians, the planes launched their missiles from Iraqi airspace, so they had to travel less far. They didn't have to travel all the way to Iran. And the other thing to take into account is that Israel has modified the F-35 to be able to make the round-trip trip to Iran without refueling. That's an Israeli modification. Justin, have you read Black Wave about the rise of terroristic Islam? If so, do you think it contains a bias against Israel? I have not read it, no. Black Wave. I'll look into it. Interesting, there would be a book about the rise of terrorist Islam and yet a bias against Israel. So it's interesting. I'll look into it. Thanks, Justin. Not your average algorithm. Did Rand not realize how resilient capitalism is? Take France, a thoroughly corrupt mixed economy that doesn't allow employers to fire people and doesn't allow landlords to evict tenants, yet it remains a first world nation. Yeah, but look, to a large extent, barely. All these European countries have a big implicit subsidy from the United States. One wonders what would have happened to France without the United States, and one wonders what's going to happen to France in the years to come. I do think Ayn Rand underestimated how long a mixed economy can survive and even grow, how long a mixed economy can survive and actually a mixed economy can grow economically. I think she thought the mixture would implode much faster than it really does. So in that sense, I think, yes, she underestimated the power of the free portion of the mixed economy to keep it going. Wes, $50. Thank you for the sticker. Really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Wes. All right, Marilyn, some in the chat seem to think employers should be forced to hire Americans when they'd rather hire an immigrant. Why do people think this? It is the right of employers to offer jobs to whomever they choose. Yes. Well, because some people in the chat are collectivists. They're not individualists. They don't hold individual rights as a primary. They don't hold the right of an employer to employ whomever he wants. That is a fundamental right. It's the right to life. It's an issue of liberty. The government has no job, no role in telling you who you can employ unless the government can show that employing this particular person violates somebody's rights. That is somehow a national security threat. So they can bar criminals and terrorists and carry infectious diseases. But that's about it. The government just has no role in this. And to argue otherwise is to be a statist of a kind, right? To say the state has some kind of obligation to the American people. And it must calibrate the economy and calibrate immigration and calibrate industrial policy or whatever to do that. But, that's that is not America, and that is not the system of government that I advocate for, and it's not a system of government I think most of you advocate for. I advocate for a government whose only job is the protection of individual rights. Yes, an employer has an absolute, unequivocal right that I think is protected by the Constitution to hire whoever they want. And this is recognized as such during, really up until the Great Depression, up until FDR. If you want to ask a question, I see some people asking questions in the chat. Just put it in the super chat and I will answer it. you can do $2 super chats, $1 super chats. Just put $1 next to it, and I'll answer it. Clark, thoughts on taking peptides? People are saying this is going to change the world of health. I don't know. I'm not taking any peptides, so I don't know. I hope so. I hope it will change everything, and that my doctor will give me a list of peptides to take so I can live to be 150. That'll be cool. Healthy, vigorous life to 150. Clark, why is Trump trying to rescue Hezbollah? Just let Israel win. It's not that hard. Because he wants to deal with Iran. He wants to get out of there. He wants to declare victory and come home. This war is a drag on his popularity, on his rating. People don't like him anymore. And he blames the war and he blames Israel. It's all about his narcissism. Clark, will Israel finish off Iran or cower to Trump? I think they'll probably cower to Trump ultimately. Not completely, but I don't think they'll finish off Iran. I think Iran will ultimately be finished off by its own people. I think its own people will ultimately overthrow the regime. It just is going to take longer than it needs to. Arthur, will Elon Musk become the world's first trillionaire? Is this unbelievably heroic? It looks likely that he will become the first trillionaire given SpaceX's IPO. It's heroic, unbelievably heroic. I don't know. I think part of it is I'm a little wary of the valuation of SpaceX. It seems a little exaggerated. I find it hard to believe that SpaceX is worth $1.7+ trillion. I don't like arguing with the market, so I'll leave it. But I think he's heroic, not because he's going to be worth $1 trillion, which is a function of the market at any given point in time. He's heroic because of all the productive endeavors he is engaged in. Arthur, are you going to respond to Paul Krugman's attack on Jeff Bezos? Yes, probably. I will make a note of that. That would be a good one to respond to. Thanks, Arthur. Stephen, I recently finished reading The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Have you ever read it? Thoughts? A long time ago. Dostoevsky writes some of the best novels in human history. Powerful, engaging, thought-provoking, and philosophically depressing, corrupt, and evil. Dostoevsky ultimately comes out on the side of religion and anti-human reason and anti-human agency. Anti-human ability to, through rational thinking, create a happy world, a happy existence. So, he's one of the greatest authors in human history, but incredibly depressing. Stephen says, also recently read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Have you ever read it? Thoughts? I have not. I have not read it. I think I watched the movie or TV series, but I've not read the book. Sorry. You've been busy reading the classics. That's great. Congratulations. Is Objectivism only a philosophy or also a movement? It's a philosophy, and there's a movement that's built around the philosophy, but it's primarily a philosophy, and I'm not sure there is a movement yet. The elements of a movement, there's a beginning of a movement, but I'm not sure there is a movement yet. We're just too small for now. But, yep. Had a great, Matt says, how was your time in New York City? Nixon 4. I had a great time in New York. It's a great city. It could be greater, but it's a great city. Mamdani and all the people who tried to destroy it will probably not be successful. Went to the opera, went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, went to the Frick Museum of Art, both fantastic. There's a great, really, really, really interesting exhibit of Raphael painting and mostly drawings of Raphael, preparatory drawings for his paintings, which was amazing. Yeah, it was it was a great trip. Went to some good restaurants. I got to see Jeffrey, who we went together to a 3-star Michelin restaurant, which was fantastic. So got to eat good food, spend time with my wife, go to museums, opera. Doesn't get much better than that. So, and New York, skyscrapers and all of that. Walking along Fifth Avenue, a blast. As for the Knicks, I'm not a fan. I would like San Antonio to win, although it doesn't look like they're going to. The Selfish Watch Collector. Thanks for everything as always, Yaron. I don't often catch the news shows, but I love the positive news part a lot. James, thank you, James. Really appreciate the support. And Matt says, did you see the clip of Netanyahu saying, in this world, it's not enough to be moral? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this short clip. No, I haven't seen that. I'll have to look it up and find it. But it doesn't surprise me. Remember, he's pretty pragmatic. Yep. All you need is to be moral, and life is good. All right, guys. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Probably 4 p.m. East Coast time. Probably 4 p.m. East Coast time. And we'll have shows all this week and into the weekend. Oh, those of you inquiring about Nikos, on Sunday. We'll be doing a show on Sunday. I think on the connection of the left with Islam. The relationship between the left and Islam. See you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your week.